Ever just stop and wonder what in the world is going on inside your own head? Well, today we're diving deep into one of your mind's most incredible, and let's be honest, sometimes super frustrating powers, your memory.
I mean, it's a classic problem, right? You can bust out a perfect chorus from a song you haven't heard in 2 decades, but the thing you were supposed to grab from the other room, poof, gone. That's the exact puzzle we're going to piece together today. Let's dig in and figure out how this all actually works.
All right, let's get into it. So our first stop is what's known as the traditional model of memory. You can kind of think of it as the original blueprint, the first real attempt by scientists to draw a map of how information flows through our brains.
So, this model, which was cooked up by Atkinson-Shiffrin, breaks it all down into three basic steps. First, information zaps into what they called a sensory store. It's like a quick flash. If you actually pay attention to it, it moves into the short-term store, which is basically whatever you're consciously thinking about right now. And then, if it's important enough, it gets filed away for good in a long-term store.
And the wild thing about this first stage is just how fast it is. A researcher named George Sperling discovered that we take in a massive amount of visual info. He called it iconic memory, but it fades away in less than a second unless we consciously grab onto it. It's exactly like the beautiful fading trail of light from a sparkler in the dark.
Okay, so if you do manage to pay attention, the information lands right here in your short-term memory. But wow, is it a crowded space? For most of us, it can only juggle about 7 things at once, and only for about 15 to 30 seconds. This is precisely why you can forget a phone number 2 seconds after hearing it, or, yep, where you just put your keys.
But hold on, is memory really just a series of filing cabinets? Well, a newer theory came along and suggested something completely different. It said that what makes a memory last isn't where you store it, but how you think about it.
This right here, this represents a huge shift in thinking. The new idea was that memory isn't some passive storage locker. It's not a hard drive. No, it's an active process. It's something your brain actually does. And the more effort you put into that process, the stronger the memory you build. Researchers Craik and Lockhart really nailed it with this idea. It's not about just shoving information into storage. It's about how deeply you engage with it right from the get-go. So, what exactly did they mean by depth? Let's break it down.
Okay, so the shallowest level is just looking at the physical stuff. You see the word table, and to answer this question, you're not thinking about furniture. You're just looking at the shapes. Are the letters big or small? This creates a really weak, flimsy memory.
Now we can go a little bit deeper by thinking about the sound of the words. You have to actually say cat and mat in your head to check if they rhyme. See? It's a bit more mental work than just looking at the shapes, so the memory it creates is a little stronger.
And here it is, the deepest level, thinking about the meaning. This is semantic processing. To answer this, you have to dig into what you already know about a daffodil and connect it to the whole concept of a plant. This is the kind of deep thinking that builds strong, long-lasting memories.
And you know what? They proved it. In a famous experiment, they asked people these exact kinds of questions. And when they tested their memory later, the results couldn't have been clearer. The words that people processed for meaning, that deep semantic level, were remembered way, way better than the others. It wasn't even close. Okay, so we've got these cool models for how memory works, but how do we actually measure it? How do scientists know if something's really been remembered or if it's gone? Well, it turns out there are a couple of different ways to pull info out of your brain. Just think about this for a second. It's a no-brainer, right? Trying to describe a face from scratch is way harder than just pointing and saying, that's them, in a lineup. And that simple difference is the perfect way to understand the two main ways we test memory: recall and recognition.
That's pretty much the whole story. Recall is when you have to pull information out of thin air. Think of an open-ended essay question on a test. Ugh. Recognition, on the other hand, is much easier. The answer is right there in front of you. You just have to spot it, like on a multiple-choice test.
But get this, it turns out not all recall is created equal. Trying to remember your grocery list is something called free recall. The order doesn't matter, just list what you can. But a phone number, that needs serial recall, which is way harder because the order is everything. And finally, there's cued recall, which is like getting a little hint to jog your memory. All right, we've got the theory, we know how memories are built, we know how they're measured, so now for the best part. Let's turn all of this into a practical toolkit that you can actually use to remember, well, pretty much anything.
So, if there's one thing you take away from all this, let it be this. If you really want to remember something, you have to process it deeply. Don't just stare at it. Think about what it means. Connect it to stuff you already understand. And here's the superpower. Relate it to your own life. Scientists call this the self-reference effect, and it's incredibly powerful. You're not just saving a file, you're weaving information into the very fabric of who you are.
And that really leaves us with a final, powerful thought. Memory isn't just something that happens to you. It's an active choice. By deciding what you pay attention to, by choosing what to engage with in a meaningful way, you become the architect of your own mind. So the real question is, what memories are you choosing to build?